Before we get started, I want to show you this article. One thing I'm going to highly recommend you guys to do, if you're really into pediatrics, is to get yourself on a bunch of different listservs that will send you articles, that will send you things to look at. About whatever your interest is. You know, like if your interest is autism, if your interest is sports with kids, whatever it is, that you just get these on these listservs and they send you articles. Because it's a great way for you, instead of having to sift through things, that articles will actually come to you. So this article came across my inbox a couple of weeks ago, and it really perturbed me because it's from the journal Nature, which is like one of the top-ranked, high-impact journals. And it says, developing a consensus research definition for profound autism using a modified Delphi method. So what is a modified Delphi method? It is a bunch of people in a room making a decision as to what they think something is. I already have a little problem with that, because it's not exactly research-based. It's a bunch of people in a room talking. So we say, this is what we think something is. What do you guys think? I think it is too. Okay, then that's one of the things. So I have a little bit of problem with that. It's not a bad thing. It's used a lot in all kinds of medical stuff. But here's the thing I don't like about this article. So if you look at this right here, the initial definition of profound autism, which they're calling PA, includes a minimum age requiring 24/7 access to adult to assure safety, and suggests considering IQ, verbal ability when defining this group. So I want you to think about this. It says the child needs to be 8 years old, diagnosed with ASD, having severe impaired cognitive abilities reflected by an IQ a score below 50, and not verbally communicating other than single words or fixed phrases, used predominantly to have their basic needs met. You know what? Most of these kids do not have an IQ of 50. They have an IQ of 50 in the test that's given. This really makes me mad. Because if you have a child with profound autism who cannot perform what a neurotypical kid can perform and can't point or say something, that doesn't mean they have an intellectual capability of an IQ of 50. What it means is that test stinks for that kid. That's what it means. Because I have some outrageously bright kids under my care who have profound autism that have been labeled like educationally, mentally retarded and developmentally disabled and all sorts of stuff. But these kids are really bright kids, but they just don't have the motoric and sensory ability to do something. And that gets me really mad, because what that means is researchers have not developed a test to test these kids. Yet they're willing to pigeonhole them having a certain IQ, even though some of these kids will eventually go on to be super geniuses, will go on to go to college, will write a thesis, will get PhDs, etc. It's really a shame. It really hurts my feelings to see something like this. And that's why you have these researchers out there, and I think research is really, really important, but I also think that research from the point of view of that particular person or child that you're researching is even more important. Because if you don't take the person into account and what they can or cannot do, then you're missing the whole point. So, for instance, a child with quote-unquote profound autism, and we have a lot of those in our practice, if I say in the beginning to point to something and they can't point to it, does that mean that they're intellectually disabled? Does that mean that they don't understand? No, it means they cannot do that task. And that's different than having an intellectual IQ of 50. The way these IQ tests are set up, they are set up for people who are able to do certain things. But if you have, like we talked about a couple weeks ago, if you have whole body apraxia, if you cannot point when asked to point to something, then imagine the frustration of a child who someone says, point to the letter A, and you're like, I know the letter A is right there, but I can't get my hand to do it. Does that mean that they have have an IQ of 50, which is profoundly disabled intellectually? Or does that mean I can't do that test, right? So one of the things that really bothers me is this whole idea of this underestimation of these kiddos. You know, I've been reading a book from the spelling, it's called Speller's Method, and the Speller's Method guidebook, and what it talks about is presumed competence. The problem that I'm seeing now out in the world, especially with these kiddos with autism, is they have this presumptive incompetence instead of presuming competence. And like, what would it hurt to turn around the other way? What would it hurt for people to look at these kids and think that they are geniuses, and we have to find a way to get them to express their genius instead of thinking that they are profoundly disabled with an IQ of 50? What would it hurt to turn that around? But instead, these guys are going to go out there and create research that's going to pigeonhole these kids into this place without giving these kids a chance to show their abilities. So time and time again, I have seen in my practice where we had this happen pretty recently, where a mom comes in with their kiddo who has profound autism, minimally speaking, a kiddo, and I said, does he know his ABCs? And she said, no. And he's 8 years old. I said, what do you mean he doesn't know his ABCs? And she said that I'm teaching him. Why are you teaching him? Because he doesn't understand. I'm like, of course he understands. He knows his ABCs. Oh, but he won't play them. That's different. Do you understand that? That is different. That's not the same thing. Not knowing is different than knowing but can't perform an action. That's a motor problem. Right? They're looking at this as a behavior problem. He can't do it. Yes, he can do it. Yes, he does know how to do it. He just can't perform it because he can't get the motor action to make it happen. That's a huge difference. So we said, well, have you ever tried to teach him? No. Well, we're going to try now. And what we did is I took his hand like this, and I held his hand, and I said, point to the letter A. And I didn't hold it tightly, I hold it very loosely, because what am I doing when I'm putting my hand on his hand? Proprioception. And now it's oh, because a lot of these kids, they cannot sense. If you can't sense that you have something, then how do you move it? So if you can't sense that you have hands, then how do you move your hand? So I go like this, because now he has awareness of his hand. And now he can move his hand. And does he point to the letter A every time? No. He points to B, he points to the letter underneath it, wherever that letter has to be in that letter board. But he's now able to do this because he now has sensation. And people will argue and say, well, you're leading him on. You're misrepresenting. You're giving him cues. I'm like, really? Where is this bad? Please tell me the bad part about this. Please tell me how it's bad for me to help him figure out how to use his hand so eventually he can use it himself. Where is the bad part of that? But if you talk to certain ABA therapists or speech-language pathologists, they'll say, yeah, it's wrong. You shouldn't do it that way because you're enabling them, right? You're leading them on. You're helping him press the letter A. Yeah, because in the beginning, when it was if this was a 2-year-old and you're helping him, would that be wrong? No. Well, then why is it okay for a 2-year-old but not an 8-year-old? Well, because he's 8 years old, he should know by now. It's not that he doesn't know; it's that he can't. Imagine having whole body apraxia and you cannot move your body reliably. You think that if they can't point, they probably can't move their tongues reliably. Because their tongues are fine motor control too. And why there's such trouble with pointing to something, it's not just that that their hands have trouble, it's that their eyes have trouble, because imagine the fine motor control of the eyes. So we're talking, when we say a child's got profound autism, it doesn't necessarily mean that they have profound intellectual disability. It just means they have profound difficulty in moving with purpose. Now they can get up and walk, gross motor, very good, they're gross motor. Fine motor is tough. So what do you have them do? Do you have them sit on a keyboard? I see a lot of they try to use keyboards and they'll have an iPad that's a 10-inch iPad trying to have a touch. That's really hard to point to letters on a keyboard like this. You gotta get a nice big letterboard like this and have them use their arms, use gross motor, use shoulders and elbows to point and not fingers, right? One of the hardest things you have to do in the beginning with these kiddos is to get them to use their finger like this. Because in the beginning, a lot of times they'll point like this because they don't know how to do this. It took me with one particular child, it took me 6 months to get him to do this. From here to this. We worked with him, the parents worked with him at home, and in 6 months now he can finally point reliably. But does that mean that he's intellectually disabled? No. All it means is he's got unbelievable motor control problems. Right? So I want you to think about this kind of stuff because you're going to see if this becomes like the letter of the law, you're going to see a lot of these kiddos with profound autism be labeled as very severely mentally, intellectually disabled. And I'm telling you that there are a lot, some of them are, granted, but a lot of them aren't. Give them a chance. Do not underestimate anybody. Presume competence, as they say in the Speller's Method. Presume that they have the ability inside, they just can't express it on the outside. You, as a chiropractor, you have the ability by giving them an adjustment, which is a neuroplastic change at input, an amazing sensory input into the body. You have the ability to change their output. And that's why we see so many kids with profound autism in my practice, because parents know that that there's a special place for these kids. And what I hope is that you guys create a special place in your practices for these kids. And don't assume that they can't, assume that they are unable to now, right? Because what I want you to do is I want you to think about it this way. Like, this is a different kind of thing. But yesterday, I saw a child come into the practice who had just horrible ear infections. And the mom came and saying, I'm sorry. And I told the mom, it's okay. Because in my brain, like what I'm thinking, in my brain, I don't see her with ear infections anymore. Right? I'm seeing the future. When I look at a child, I see the future. I'm not seeing what I'm seeing in the present moment. I'm seeing the future. You have to ask the parents to see the future with you. Because they're stuck in the present, right? They're so used to seeing their child having these issues. That's all they think about. But you have to future pace them and say, that's where they are might be here now, but this is where they're going. I can see that. This is going to be your gift when you guys do the things that you do to the kids in clinic or in your practices or associateships or whatever, is you future pace the patients. Even if it's back pain, your future pace. I can see you without back pain. I can see you without ear infections. I can see you doing better with all these different, whatever issues you have going on. But you need to see it for them to see it as well, right? You need to see the future and then show them the future, right? And show them the future through your adjustments and stuff.